It's Zach Edey with Purdue men's basketball, and you're watching Boilers in the Stands.
What's up, ladies and gentlemen? We are back and better than ever. This is Boilers in the Stands. I am your host, Kraig Bowers Jr. Alongside me, as always, is my guys, Kraig Bowers, Joe Jackson, and Aidan Kunst. Excited to get into March Madness now that Purdue has checked a few boxes, winning the Big Ten regular season championship, winning the Big Ten tournament championship, which was a lot of fun over the weekend at the United Center. But now we turn to the dance and see if Purdue can slay the ultimate dragon and find their way to the Final Four and maybe even a national championship. And we'll talk about some of that stuff here later on. We do have a special guest coming up in just a few moments, the Queen of West Lafayette. Every time she's shown on the big board, Purdue fans go absolutely wild, and we're excited to have her on here in just a few moments. So, we just thought we'd have a little fun with Julia and learn about her story, coming with Zach over here to the Purdue men's basketball program. And she's become somewhat of a celebrity herself. So I know some Purdue fans are going to be excited to hear from her. And then, like I said, we'll get into some of the nuts and bolts of how Purdue can get to the road to the Final Four. So how we doing today, Kraig?
I'm doing good, man. I'm about recovered from the weekend. It was a long 3 days with Greg. No, I'm just kidding. It was a great 3 days with Greg up there. Great 3 days of watching basketball start to finish. Whether obviously awesome to watch the Purdue team play, but great basketball just in general all the way around to get to watch through the weekend. And I just feel good about where we're at right now. And regardless of what happens in March, everybody knows my feeling about single elimination situations and matchups, and anything can happen. But this team's got two big things checked off the box already. This season's already been extremely successful, and hopefully it continues to be so. But I'm going into March really excited to root for this team and excited about what's already happened.
Yeah, absolutely. So how we doing, guys? Joe, you've been hard at work. You're giving threads for the 16 seed potentials. You're giving threads for Memphis and Florida Atlantic. I know We're going to dig into it a little deeper, but anything stand out to you as far as these four matchups are concerned?
Yeah, with the 16 seeds, Texas Southern and Fairleigh Dickinson, they're 16 seeds for a reason. They're pretty polar opposites. Fairleigh Dickinson is the smallest team in the all of D1, which is kind of funny. And we'll get into probably the individual matchups and stuff, but obviously we expect Purdue to for sure get past that. They should, and then set up Memphis or FAU. Texas Southern is kind of built in a similar makeup to Memphis. And so there's that thing to consider. But, I've enjoyed kind of just doing my threads, breaking them down and getting to know the teams more. Because obviously I'd watched no Texas Southern, no Fairleigh Dickinson. I caught a little bit of Memphis just previously this year. But it's a good little quadrant or a little 4-teamer. FAU and Memphis are both tough. They're both tough at the 8-9. So should be some exciting stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. And somebody asked, Jeff asked, was the ride back from Greg's to home much more peaceful than riding with me to Chicago?
Yes, 100% yes, full send. That's all I got on that. It was definitely more peaceful, less stressful, just all the way around. Yep.
So, Aidan, now that you've had a few days to let this bracket marinate after the Big Ten Tournament Championship, what are you thinking as we head to Friday and, potential matchup with an 8-9 seed going into Sunday?
Feeling confident, man. Watched a good amount of both teams, and obviously there's some struggles or some bad matchups that we could run into, but I think this team's ready for it, man. I think I don't know if it's I like that they got to win the Big Ten tournament, won some games on a neutral floor, won some tough games, and I just think they're ready going into March. I think certainly there's some concerns, but you look at the two matchups, and I think if we get FAU, they really are going to struggle to contain Zach, and if we get Memphis, they're going to sell out to contain Zach, and probably give a lot of opportunities for the other guys. So it's both kind of ways there. They're different teams. I think FAU matches up really well with Memphis. So I really wouldn't be surprised to see the Owls in our game, assuming obviously we take care of business Friday. I would not be surprised to see Florida Atlantic on Sunday, because I think I do think they're going to beat Memphis, even though it seems like everybody's picking Memphis to beat Purdue. Memphis has to actually get out of the first round. So it is kind of interesting to see that. It's either like Memphis beat Purdue or Purdue to go up to the Final Four. It's kind of interesting to see people's takes on everything.
Yeah, I was going to say, I've seen just as many Purdue to the Final Four takes as I've seen, but it's one or the other. Because I think everybody looks at the bracket and says the same thing. The stylistic matchup that's the hardest is potentially round 2, and then from there, nothing really scares you from Purdue's standpoint. We've played Marquette. Marquette's gotten better defensively, but they're still not an elite defensive team. We've played Duke. We can, match up well with Duke. Kansas State's sleeping over there somewhere where they've got some guards that could really maybe push and hurt on dribble drive penetration. But, you look at it and you're like, man, if we get by the second round, then things look okay from a matchup standpoint from then on. And I'm with you. I've said from the jump, a lot of people are saying Memphis is built to beat us. Well, FAU is built to beat Memphis. Like what Memphis does well, FAU can handle well. So I'm with you. I've got FAU beating Memphis in the first round.
Yeah, that's gonna be one of the better first round matchups. Period. I think FAU and Memphis. Kendrick Davis for Memphis is one of the best guards. Period in the country. I know he got left. What did he make third team? All whatever just dropped.
Yeah, I'm not
I think
sure.
He was somewhere there. I know Sasser got first team. But that's really. But then Florida Atlantic's just a machine. Like they just don't make mistakes. The ball just seems like it snaps around from the bit I've seen. Lots of 3-point shooters. They have a 7-1 guy, in the middle. And Memphis is pretty much a 2-headed horse with Kendrick and DeAndre Williams. So it's going to be fun. And then, like you said, I feel comfortable pretty much with anybody. Purdue playing anybody in that potential Sweet 16 matchup. Or Roberts scares me just a bit, and that's purely just like if that happens, what then depending on whether Purdue's the first or second game out of that 2, the crowd's going to be behind Oral Roberts if they can keep it close. Ace Smith is one of the most electric guards in the country, has the shot making to keep it close. But I still would pick Purdue over them. So I'm with you guys. Like, I think the second round's tough. Not that Sweet 16 or Elite 8 is easy by any means, but I would feel comfortable against pretty much any of those teams.
Yeah, it'll be interesting. So I'm in a little bit of a back and forth with Julia. We're trying to effort her onto the show. She's trying to use the link through her iPad and having a little technical difficulty. So just bear with us, but I'm in communication with her. She's going to jump on here as soon as we can get this figured out. So if you guys keep kicking it around here for a second. And as I say that, our special guest is joining us now, which I'm very relieved about. So I'm going to play this clip to introduce her.
I assume you aren't really able to peek at the Jumbotron too much, but whenever your mom gets up there on the Jumbotron, crowd erupts. Do you think that in Mackey Arena alone, do you think you're a bigger celebrity or her right now?
I don't know. It's tough. People love her. I honestly think she could probably run for mayor and win it at this point.
Oh yeah.
Like people really love her in Lafayette. I think she has more followers on Twitter than I do right now. So it's just funny. People really love her, but it's cool.
Yeah.
Does she ever talk some smack about that she's got more followers than you, or
a little bit sometimes? She says her Twitter game's good.
And there it is. Julia Edey joins the show with her great Twitter game and and a great son at that in Zach Edey. So we appreciate you joining us, Julia. I was nervous. I had reached out to you through Facebook and you were kind enough to reach back. And I was like, I really hope this is actually Julia Edey. I was like, you just never know, right? Somebody with a fake account or something. So I'm glad we could get it worked out. How you doing tonight?
I'm good. I'm sorry I couldn't figure out the link. I got to tell you, Zach would tell you that I'm not great on my phone. So there you go.
Oh no, it's completely fine. And that's what we do here. We, we work through the technical difficulties. It's just part of the live approach. So, we want to get right into it and have some fun with you. You've been, we call you the Queen of West Lafayette here and you built up a bit of a celebrity. I've seen you at Mackey. People want to take pictures with you. I think I've even seen somebody ask for your autograph, and you're always so gracious with your time with everybody. And Purdue's social team was smart enough to put you on the Jumbotron every time the crowd needed a lift. And Zach's right. Your Twitter game is great because you're just such a bright spirit. And I know we've met in person, so I know what that's like in the in-person interaction, but just your positive vibes on Twitter too, I think go a long way for this fan base. What's it been like for you ingratiating yourself with the Purdue program and their fans?
To be honest, it's been pretty easy. I mean, it's a pretty embracive group. My Twitter, I started just for fun because it's just a mom's perspective of some crazy moments, that as we go along. My Twitter game obviously isn't good enough. Zach's beat me again, so he's ahead of me in terms of followers. So I'm a little bummed about that.
The National Player of the Year finally passed you up, huh?
Damn. Yeah, it's a problem. Yep, I know. So, but you know what? It's funny because I was just, goofing around and just being me. And apparently lots of people wanted to have some positive energy because Twitter's an environment that can be pretty tough for sure in terms of, kind of toxicity. Sorry, you might notice my voice is a little weird. I don't know. Greg, you know me so that you would know my voice is not sounding normal. That's definitely the after effects of our trip just now. Like that was a bit nuts. So yeah.
This is probably the reason, right? Was screaming at the end of that stressful Penn State finish and they finish on top. But we had to kind of root them through that moment because it got tense there for a second, but I think luckily I almost feel happy that looking back, I went back and watched. I'm glad Penn State decided to call that timeout when they crossed half court. I think maybe the miracle might have happened had they didn't. So, survive in advance, live to fight another day, and another trophy raised. And that's the thing, and before I kick it around to my guys, Kraig Bowers, Joe Jackson, and Aidan Kunst, my co-hosts here. We've really enjoyed talking, with your son and covering this team. What has it been like for you? Because like for me, seeing his growth throughout the way and then this year accomplishing things that they fell short of last year, you see this sense of achievement satisfaction with him. And for me, it's I'm very happy for him because I know he's not a loud spoken guy, but I know how much this means to him to be the leader of this team. What's it been like for you to watch the evolution of your son take the reins and be the leader and achieve goals that I know mean a lot to him?
Yeah, it's incredible. Honestly, just seeing his growth and the way that he's embraced the work, the way that the team just operates, and it's been said before that this team's special, and it can't be said enough, honestly. And the fact that there's no egos, like it's really an amazing team. And the 3 years he's been here has been just amazing. Every year you can just see a little bit more. It's been different every single year. They've all been amazing in their own ways. This year for sure, with this being a bit, I don't want to promote Zach's Twitter, but he did have that rebuilding year tweet the other day, which just about killed me. I thought that was a great tweet. Who the heck thinks that you're going to end up with two trophies after a rebuilding year? It's just, so-called rebuilding year. It was incredible. So, these guys are just a fantastic group. They're a lot of fun. Purdue, obviously, I was talking to somebody and I was saying, Purdue does have that culture, and you hear that word thrown around a lot in terms of, culture. And sometimes people talk a lot about it, but there's something kind of just a steady vein, within Purdue that's just kind of a workman attitude. The very fact that its big mascot is, a guy that runs a train with a hard hat tells you an awful lot. So, I love it. And it's incredible. And, I have a special bond with a few of these guys, particularly that are closer to Zach, the guys that he lives with and that have been through a lot of the journey with him. And there's some guys here that have been through, I'm sure it's true with every team, but I don't know any other college team, so I can only talk for this one, that these guys have been through a lot. There's this guy, Mason did play for coming on 3 years. You've got Brian Waddell with, 3 surgeries later. You got Ethan with mono in his first year. All of these guys going through COVID the first year. Like, the list just goes on and on, honestly. But they don't use it as an excuse. And I have to say, as a mom, particularly of my kid, but I can share, what the thoughts are from the other moms. It's just a super proud, it's not about what the guys are doing. Obviously what they're doing is super fun, but it's how they're doing it and the way they hold themselves and the way they hold each other. And it's incredible. It's really just a place it's really safe for them all. It's great to see.
Definitely.
Yeah, Julia, thanks again for coming on. And some of the other shows that I've seen you on, you've mentioned that you decided to make the decision to retire early and come to Purdue when Zach came here. What's been the most rewarding part of that experience? Because, we see you on the Big Ten journey with the whole team and whatnot. Just as you've gone through that process, what do you think's been the most rewarding part of that?
It's funny. I think that I'm really lucky because I had the opportunity to be able to retire. So obviously that's, a luxury for sure. Not everybody gets to do that. And to be able to, but it was scary when Zach's going to the States, it's a whole nother country. It's a new sport for him and everything. So just being able to see his growth and his steadiness and just the way that he's incorporated himself in and the way that he accepts everything that's given to him with a certain amount of grace, despite the fact he, did drop that F-bomb the other day.
Yeah, what did you say to, what was your reaction when he did that? And then what did you say to him when you gave him a hug later?
Yeah, I dropped some F-bombs when I was hugging him. So I have to say he was absolutely right in his interview when he said that I do come from an engineering background, so I used to work in the field with a lot of men, and so I have to say it. I grew up between two brothers, so not to blame it on everyone else, but yeah,
I'm a bricklayer, so you're preaching to the choir there.
Yeah, and I did see some comments that in Canada that's barely a swear word, and I was thinking, here it means have a nice day. No, I'm just kidding. It's it was amazing. It was just his passion and him being authentic, and I was fine with it. I did see poor Coach Painter holding his head, thinking, you just did that on national television. I think Zach kind of had a moment where he kind of thought, oops, lost to myself a little bit in the moment. But yeah, it's I've forgotten the question because I was thinking about that moment so much because it was hilarious.
Yeah, and
Go
it's
ahead.
been.
Well, I was just going to throw it back to Kraig if there was any more to that point.
No, she answered it to start out, just in terms of watching his growth and everything that he's been accepted and that's and been given to him through that process and whatnot. So yeah, she answered the question first before we got on the
F-bombs.
Have you? I'm assuming since you have so much Twitter prowess that you've scrolled through and seen all the screen grabs of the different reactions from the players and coaches and everything.
Yeah, I look at it a bit, but I have to admit I don't dwell on it too much just because sometimes it can get a little bit heavy and there's
gotcha.
People are always kind of liking to fire some stuff that you just can't be bothered to.
Yeah. There really wasn't a whole lot negative around that moment. It was more just funny takes of
it was the best was
David Jenkins and Ethan Morton's reactions
and Matt Painter doing the Home Alone. Go ahead, Joe.
No, it was just a moment of such pure joy, and I mean, honestly, as I say, I didn't necessarily scroll through all of it. I did watch that take a few times just because the reactions were priceless. They really were. And that's just those guys. They celebrate each other. They laugh at each other. They laugh with each other. And, it's been a really great ride.
Yeah. And I kind of want to talk a little bit about Zach Edey starting with basketball, and it's been well documented. He played baseball and hockey, and you didn't force him to play basketball or anything like that. But as he started to pick it up, was there a moment where you were like, oh, like he's really good at this, or like you saw the potential? Was there a specific moment that comes to mind?
He's funny because, and I know it's been said before about the fact that, he gets a lot of he's just tall. So that really is part of his soul. He has always a chip in there because it's hard when you're always going to have this sort of built-in excuse that people might throw at you, whether or not, whatever you do. And so, he, I don't know why I'm losing a lot of the questions today. I seem to be drifting off on my own thoughts here, but yeah. So
I do that a lot here, Julia.
Yeah. You know what? I have to say I'm operating on very little sleep. I've been running back and forth. I took down my Christmas lights just today because I've been living in West Lafayette for the last 2 months, and I've never had a Christmas tree as crispy as this one. I could light a match to it and it would go on.
Yeah, basically what he was saying was, was there a moment where you realize, wow, he can be not just solid at basketball, but great like he is now?
I think the moment for me came when actually there was a couple of months. So, he started and I thought, he's looking comfortable. He's having fun out there. And that's a lot of the base of Zach. If he's got joy in it, he's dialed in and he'll run through a brick wall for you. I think it was when his AAU coach actually said, you know what, I want to take him to the Canadian men's or Canadian national. I want them to see him. And he'd only been playing for, I don't even know, 3 weeks at that point or something, playing in a serious way. And I thought, this is crazy. Okay. And I have to admit in my head, I thought, yeah, you know what, he's tall and we'll see what's going on. And when they kept him in the camp till the last day, I thought, whoa, that's pretty nutty just because it wasn't, too long. So that was my first moment of, and my brother who used to play a lot of sports said to me, like he could maybe play on the national team at some point. And I thought, he's starting in grade 10. This is crazy. And then he was in this Canadian All-Stars kind of a game for futures. And during that, he did well. He held his own. And again, he'd been only playing for a month and he had 10 block shots. And it was funny because at the time I kind of went, yeah, he wasn't scoring much though, because he didn't have that feel at all. And his coach said, it was kind of funny. His coach was like, he just hit a home run. I was like, okay. So, that was the starts of pieces of belief. I think really for Zach, though, just knowing him, I don't know that even now that I have this, like, oh my gosh, I think he's doing amazing things. And he does have he's such an unknown. But I think that a lot of it for him is just, it's hard to underestimate Zach, but it's hard to also anticipate that this is a possibility for him. So, you just enjoy the ride. I don't really know that I've ever had moments where I just say, oh, well, yeah, he could be great. I just think, he is great. He's doing great things, and that's kind of the beginning of the end, just staying in that moment.
Hey, Julia, thanks for coming on. I wanted to ask you, I read a great article in the, I think it was Ethan's local newspaper, the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette, about Zach and Ethan's relationship. And Ethan talking about how, Zach's pretty messy, and then Zach saying that Ethan's always eating his leftovers. And so I was just wondering, could you shine some light on that relationship? It seems like a pretty special one between those two guys.
Yeah, those two, I mean, it's funny. I love Ethan's parents and his family. So they are, brothers from another mother, but from the same, like, it's just kind of crazy. They're the two of them, and with Jared Wolbrin, they connected in first year, really. And I don't know. I'm not too sure. It's just, I think that they both have very different personalities, but they really mesh, and they both have gigantic hearts. And, Zach's a bit quieter on it. Ethan can be just such a joy, and I think that speaks a lot to Zach. But yeah, no, they have a great relationship. It feels a little bit like brothers sometimes, when they're over for dinner and they're arguing or whatever. It feels like everything, like there's never any feelings of anything except for, you're a goof. No, you're a goof, kind of a thing.
Yeah.
So, they are, they're really cool together. And, I didn't see that article, but Ethan's mom had mentioned it to me, so I've got to see it. But that sounds about right. Zach's an absolute slob, and and Ethan is likes home cooking. It's all good.
Yeah, who doesn't like some good home cooking? When you talk about, the thing I'm interested in, and we asked Zach the same thing. You just mentioned how he just got into basketball. You couldn't believe, like, right away they're thinking about the national team. But when we were younger, when we were kids, we were encouraged to play all sports. And nowadays it's not like that, especially for someone like Zach, being as tall as he is, he's been tall his whole life. And I'm sure people were constantly encouraging him to go play basketball. And it's been documented on these, like, journey stories and different interviews you've done that you didn't do that. What was that like for you to let the game come to him and encourage him to do other sports? Because it feels like now, I don't know if Zach had played basketball to start first grade, if he'd be the national player of the year. I think because he played these other sports, it got him a skill set that he wouldn't have learned if he had just stayed with one sport. I wanted to get your thoughts on your thought process of him growing up and how that has kind of all come to fruition now.
In general, I mean, nobody likes to get pushed into anything. I think that's just kind of the way life goes. And I think that for Zach, he needs, he's so tall. There's an expectation, obviously, of, oh yeah, you should play basketball. You should be good. You should. And all that pressure when you're entering into an arena where you've never played before can be really daunting. And I think it was important. I mean, when he was a kid, it was just, he just needed to be able to enjoy whatever he was doing, enjoy his own, whatever he was at, without the pressures and without the feeling that somebody was thinking, what, like, this is what you should do. I mean, there's an expression that we all should ourselves to death, and it's kind of true. So, you don't want to have that put on yourself either. So I do agree with you. And I mean, I guess also the other thing is just, finding your way. So for Zach himself, if you're pushed into something, and even if you're good at it, it only goes so far if it's just you're only doing it because you're good at it, And I think that fire in the belly is important for any of the guys. So I don't know if there was that much of a conscious thought about, okay, it's not that we ever thought, oh, he even should play basketball. He should do what he wants to do as long as he's doing it well, kind of thing, and well for himself. So I know what you mean, though, because when he started first playing, I was a bit nervous because there was a couple of coaches that wanted to spring him up the ladder, put him on a few teams, and that was great. It's a support, like what a first world problem to have. But on the other hand, there was a conscious desire to say, hey, listen, let this kid make sure that he loves this, because as soon as it turns into, that moment, there's going to be moments where you're sitting there saying, I don't want to do this, or I'm too tired to go to practice. And if you don't have that love and real love for it, it's going to be a tough go for you. So he seems to love it.
Do you think that the culture of sports in Canada is different? Because like I almost feel like had he grown up in America, it's different. It may be, I don't know what it's like there, but I know how it is here. Do you think that the culture is different there, where it was more inviting for him to try other things, where there isn't this constant outside pressure of putting him in the basketball, hamster wheel, so to speak?
No, that's a great question. I think that, like, as we know, hockey is Canada's sport, kind of thing. Kids learn to play hockey really young. There's ice rinks all over the place. You have outdoor rinks, kids just play shinny all the time. They're in their driveway. The way you guys have nets everywhere and everyone's is shooting baskets. Down here is all hockey nets and everyone's got like a little fake goalie in their net. So, but it's funny because still, even with that, it's the love of the game, kind of thing. That's how it all starts, because hockey's not that glamorous of a sport. And I think the difference, so it's interesting you asked about the culture. I think the difference is partly that in Canada, there's not athletic scholarships. You don't get full rides up here for athletics. So you're not really maybe thought that way when you're a kid. Like, you're not really considering that so much about, maybe this could be a path or not a path. So there is that difference for sure. Having said that, when we went to the US, even the very first AAU tournament that Zach went to was in Indiana. So all roads seem to have led to Indiana. There was a close circle there. I don't know what happened there, but something on the universe said Indiana's the place. And I remember when we did get there, I had the first real feeling of, wow, sports are different down here. I mean, we love our sports up here, but you're right. It's not necessarily nurtured at a young age that you could be pro, except for hockey. There's hockey parents that are pretty intense, but in terms of the other sports, it's known that the path you're going to need is to go down to the States. So yeah, I don't know. That's a great question, Greg. I'm not sure. I think that probably fed into a little bit, that there's just not necessarily that feeling as soon as you're, kind of, you come out, but you play sport just for, kind of the activity more.
Sure.
Okay. We've got several people in the chat asking what shinny is.
Oh, okay. Shinny is pickup hockey. Sorry, yeah.
Okay.
I thought you guys on my phone.
I was also like, wait,
I thought it was a dance move.
Yeah. Shinny is pickup hockey. So you go to a hockey rink, everybody throws their sticks into the rink, and then they just split up the team by grabbing it, because they don't want to have it so that it's known, hey, these good guys get to play together, and they take the sticks and they throw them, one side to the other, and wherever your stick lands is the team you're going to be on, and it's pickup hockey on ice. I guess you can play shinny on ball hockey too, but yeah, we have all forms. Yeah, so I guess it's just like pickup ball.
I gotcha. Hey, when you guys were going through the recruiting process and looking at different colleges, I'm just curious, like, how much as parents, like, how much do you get involved in that process, or is it just kind of let Zach do his thing and decide where he wants to go? And maybe what jumped out or stood out to you about Matt Painter and Purdue through that process?
Yeah, I mean, really, there needed to be a reasonable involvement, and Zach was asking for it because we didn't know the space. So, and his job was to, he was on a huge learning curve. He still is. I've said it before that it's like he was drinking from a fire hose. So the last thing he really needed was try to navigate this. So what does this mean, and how does this recruiting mean? And what are the NCAA rules on recruiting and all this kind of a thing. So as a result, I said to him, I'll learn the space for you and, help you figure that part out. And when he started kind of hitting the radar in terms of things, it gets intense. It gets intense fast. And, at some points, and we had to even figure out that space of recruiting versus an offer. And did that guy offer? And they say, I want to offer. Does that mean that's an offer? Like, even the language gets kind of wacky. Honestly, you don't know what you're dealing with sometimes. And it was important to me and important to Zach, like for things to be a little bit more still for him, so he doesn't particularly want to have a lot of calls from these coaches, but he knew those relationships needed to be built and to understand where these guys are coming from. So I ended up being fairly involved. So things were fed through me. And then at some point we said, we really needed to have a kind of handle on who's really recruiting him. And so I was the main contact. So it was, contact my mom and we'll see where it goes from there. And it was partly because I needed to be able to distill the information because there's a lot coming at you. And so in a, typical analytical fashion, I had this huge spreadsheet that had all sorts of things analyzed. And there was some basic things to me that I ran through Zach. So, he's always in the ultimate control. It's his life. But, I check in with him just to find out what he's thinking. And, we had some parameters that we thought were important that might not necessarily be important to every other player. But Zach was coming at it sideways from a different place. And, for us, it was important that there's a coach there. There's some basic thresholds that some people would think are weird, and maybe they are. But, for us, I said, you need a coach that's been in one place for a while and is going to really buy into you and, really understand the program and be willing to stick it out with you. And then we needed a coach that was where the head coach was involved in the recruiting. You get an awful lot of dialogue from assistant coaches and stuff, but ultimately with Zach where he is and him being so raw, the head coach has to buy in, or you're going to be in a state where assistant coach is trying to push your guy, and meanwhile your guy is, the head coach says, yeah, okay, well, what have you done for me lately? So those were kind of some of the pieces for me personally, and for Zach too. I said to him, I'd love to see you in a March Madness, and incredibly, he's been into 3. So there was some, like I say, some kind of basic funny things, and in there, probably what a lot of people analyze, who's ahead of him on the scholarship roster or things like that. So a lot of information kind of was just collected and distilled, and then from there, let's see how it went. I think with Purdue, they do have a reputation for the bigs. I kind of personally, like on a personal basis, I kind of liked that it's a bit of a quieter, steady school. It's not kind of loud and too, shiny. Well, Mackey's really loud, but I mean, in terms of its reputation, it's not kind of out there. It's just kind of a quiet, steady way. So it sort of fits Zach's personality. But for us, a lot of it had to do with the coaches. And that's something that really, it's not so much about, is our guy going to get playing time, et cetera, et cetera. It was really the same thing. We used the same approach in terms of that as we had even when he was playing hockey and baseball. He had some opportunities to play on some teams where there was going to be a lot of winning going on. But if you didn't feel that the coaches were going to really give them the qualities or the attitudes that you yourself believed in, then the winning's nice, but are you getting the person that you want to have? As because a coach has so much influence. I mean, they see Zach more often than I do, easily by 10 times, kind of a thing. And so Purdue itself, when Zach was getting recruited, and it's been well documented that there was another school that was high on the list of possibilities, and we needed a comparable, and we said Purdue was one of the ones that Zach and I talked about, and he said that's a place I'd like to have an offer. When we came, it's funny because Purdue itself was reluctant. They wanted him to have a visit, but they didn't want him there for that visit, the one that you see in that picture, because there was no games going on. And I mean, for Purdue, a big bunch of the appeal is seeing a home game at Mackey. You'll be blown away. We went, and it was an inter-squad scrimmage when we went, and even then, for us, we thought this is incredible. It was fan day and everything else. So I guess it's sort of funny because we didn't get to see Purdue in its full glory during the visit. But in a weird way, we got to see the quiet parts of Purdue that maybe we needed to see a little bit more, the team, how they work together, how they play against each other, how the coaches are treating the guys during something like a inter-squad scrimmage. One of the things that stuck out for Zach was that all the guys came out when he went, when they went bowling. And, I went back to the hotel and, when he came back, I was like, hey, how's it going? How was it? And he said, everybody was there. Like, that was pretty incredible. And so you just automatically felt that there's this connection on the team that's not like an expectation you guys all have to report for, recruiting duty. It was like, yeah, they kind of like hanging out, or, it's a pretty easygoing kind of a squad. So that fit with him. And then I have to say, the first time that when we were at West Lafayette, I was a little bit stunned when we were walking around in terms of, ironic now when I think about it, in terms of, coach walking around and people coming up to him and wanting selfies and pictures and autographs. And I was like, whoa, he's a bit of a celebrity. And I remember there was one time he even messaged me, Zach was back down at IMG and he was checking in. And I was laughing to him saying, if you need a little bit of quietness, why don't you come up here? I'm in a hockey arena right now with my younger guy. And he said, yeah, that would be good, except I don't know anything about hockey. So, I don't know. It's just a feeling, it's a gut, really, when you get down to it. It checked all the boxes, had a gut feeling. Coach made time for us the next day. Zach really was a recruit that's, as it's again been well documented, he was not, he was barely a 3-star, and he was low down 400 something or other. And yet he was given the time of day just the way he would be if he had been, in my opinion, Mr. Basketball, kind of a thing. So that speaks volumes to how they're going to treat the guy at the top versus all the way through. And I think that was a big piece personally for him.
Well, Matt Painter scares the crap out of me. He's a really friendly guy, like just around in normal settings. He's a Cub fan. I've seen him at Wrigley once, but we had him on the show to start the year, and he terrifies me because he's got that look. He's just got that stare, and he's like locked in, especially when you're talking basketball. And then when I do these post-game pressers now, I try to build up the courage to ask a question, but he holds not just his players to a high standard, but I feel like he holds the media guys to a standard. Like, you better have a good question, and he's not going to, be like rude, like some other coaches you'll see do that to someone with a bad question, but the difference in his response if he respects what you're saying and what he isn't. So he scares the crap out of me. And I think he knows that. And I think he enjoys it a little bit. Somebody in the chat, Lynn Ream, said she read a quote where you thought Matt Painter was brutally honest. Do you still think that?
Yeah, I do. And I think that that's the quality that's important, actually, that your kid can be able to take that and hear that from the coach and, not cave and not be coddled, kind of a thing. It's not just about growing a basketball player, especially when you've got these guys that are coming in 17, 18 years old. It's easy to give them the fluffy parts and say, you're going to be amazing, kind of a thing. But you also need the guy that's going to say to you, hey, listen, this is where it's at, and this is what you're going to need to do. And it's hard because you need to also, during that time, as a parent and as the player, you're making a decision that's pretty impactful. And now I know the transfer portals change things and stuff like that, but that wasn't in place at the time. And that wasn't, even if it was in place, it wasn't something we wanted to consider. We just said, wherever he goes, we want him to be there for his full career. Like, it's hard bouncing around and always having one foot out the door. So you got to have a place where you feel like, yeah, okay, you might hear some things that you might not necessarily want to hear, but if they're the truth, then that's all you can ask for. So I do think he's brutally honest, but he's kind. So it's not like he's going to take you down and rip you up. He's telling you because he wants you to hear that, and he wants you to be a better person for it. So I think that that's a big piece, for me. And I don't think, you are trusting this person to help grow your kid. It's just the way it goes.
Right.
Or maybe not. But at the same time, you need your kid to be able to take ownership of that stuff too. So you just need somebody that's going to be able to treat them with integrity and be able to really hold them accountable in a way that they can hear. And
Absolutely.
Absolutely. And Julia, we've got thousands of Purdue graduates that will watch this, and Purdue is a renowned engineering school. So I have to ask, you said you were an engineer. Were you civil engineer, mechanical engineer, aeronautical? What was your field?
You did hear I swear a lot. There's no way I'm civil. I'm not civil at all. I'm a mechanical engineer, and I worked in the nuclear business up here up in Ontario. So I was in the nuclear plants for 30 years doing inspections, and at one point I did some teaching, and then I was in the regulatory affairs. So yeah, it was a bit of a long career, but yeah, mechanical engineer is the trade. And up here in Canada, I don't know, this is teaching you all sorts of things. So here you have the shinny is pickup hockey, and here in Canada, I don't know if you can see, I wear this little pinky ring. So that's engineers up in Canada wear this, they call it the iron ring. So when we graduate, they give you an iron ring that was built from this bridge. God, now I'm starting to sound like Painter telling you guys some kind of offshoot story.
Oh, I love it.
Yeah, it's built from this bridge that collapsed. And it's a reminder. It's supposed to be a reminder to us that you put it on your working hand. It's a reminder of your duty as an engineer for what you're supposed to be doing. You know, you're designing safety, and that those things are always a little bit tenuous. So you ought to remember that. So yeah, that's the story.
Okay,
For sure.
Thank you.
Joe, Aidan, do you guys have a few more? Because we have a few in the chat, and I want to give a couple to the chat, but I also want Julia to be able to get to bed. She's been it was a long weekend covering, so I can only imagine how long it was for you, stressing out as a parent for this team. And this has been an amazing interview, and everybody in the chat has just said so many glowing things about your personality and the son that Zach is to this program, and we really appreciate your time tonight jumping on. Joe, Aidan, do you have anything more before I ask for a couple from the chat?
Yeah, I got a quick one.
Go ahead.
Purdue Pete was voted out, I think it was last year, 2 years ago, like the creepiest mascot in the country or whatever. Did you have any first thoughts when you first laid eyes on Purdue Pete, who I think is the best mascot in the country? But
yeah, no, he's pretty creepy. I mean, the first time my brother says it, he's like, he's the scariest guy. And I've seen crazy things where it's like most likely to be a serial killer and all this, but he's tough. I think he's great. I love him. Yeah, I don't know how that guy dunks with that big head on him, honestly.
yeah.
So, no, I think Purdue Pete's great, and I think it's, no, but he is a little bit creepy. In a good way. Scary. I would say more scary. He's intimidating.
Okay.
Yeah. Aidan, you got anything else, bud?
Yeah, I've got one. It's just pretty well documented how like routine based Zach is. We know he has to have sushi before every game. We know that the 15 to 20 minute of just hook shots after shoot around. I'm wondering where that started and kind of where you saw that level of discipline and work ethic and kind of commitment to a routine start from a young age. I mean, he's only 20 and I'm 20. I know I can't keep a routine at all. So that's pretty impressive. And I think that's a big reason, it seems like, why he's so consistent game in, game out.
It's a good question. I think, I think the discipline starts with hockey is a really disciplined sport. And it's funny, I never really thought that much about it because that's why the kids started playing. And I think that's partly because in hockey, the shifts are really short. So you better get out there, you better do your thing, and you better get off. And, that's kind of just, it's a sport that's really requires a certain amount of discipline, and especially because he played D, not forward. So he didn't play the D being defense. Sorry, Kraig, throwing all these hockey terms around. And so he, I think that was part of it. Maybe it starts with the sports that he learned to play kind of growing up. And then I think when he moved on to baseball, he was a pitcher for a long time. Like that was his thing. He was a first baseman and then he was a pitcher. And I think that's a position that requires a really strict routine in terms of your approach. You let go of the ball a little bit different. You step a little different. You see baseball players with the craziest routines, kind of a thing, the way they even approach the mound sometimes. So I think maybe those pieces came a little bit from the sports that he played, but having said that, not every kid, you're right, that plays baseball or hockey necessarily have that kind of discipline. And I think maybe partly for Zach, when he was learning basketball, he was hungry for it. So maybe because he came in late, maybe because he learned this love and he said, I could do this. But I think he needed to break it down into bite-sized chunks for himself too. And, you've heard him say, I needed it simple, not easy. So in order to do that, keep it simple, that routine kind of soothes you a bit and also gives you confidence and sets you up for being able to kind of stay right exactly where you're supposed to be instead of having your brain fly over, 4 million different things. So I think it's just a combination, and I think it's just the way he's programmed. He's very analytical, he's very curious, but he knows that in order to digest it, he's going to need to break it down, or else it's going to end up, where you can have your thoughts just shoot off somewhere where they don't need to be.
I appreciate you filling me in on the hockey terms, because literally the only thing I know about hockey is from watching Letterkenny on Hulu TV. So I appreciate that.
Yeah.
You're missing a good game.
Yeah. The Blackhawks were good for a minute here and everybody got excited. When I was a kid, I got obsessed with it because of the Mighty Ducks movies. I think that was something that really, for kids my age, really introduced us to the sport. And then we'd be out playing, what'd you call it, shibby? We'd be out on the
Shinny. Yeah,
shinny. We'd be out on the streets using recycling bins as our goals and pretending like we were Charlie Conway from Mighty Ducks. But Brad Prather asks, what has Coach Brantley meant to Zach in his development here?
Oh, Coach Brantley's awesome. I mean, I can't say enough about that man. He is all heart. Like, he's just I don't even know. He's meant a lot to Zach because he's quietly believes in him. Like the whole program does, but I think just having a guy that was going to be beside him and put in the time with him and know that he's just giving, like the amount of time that he's spent in the film room with Zach, breaking things down and analyzing things is just crazy. And Zach knew that he could ask him and Brantley wouldn't say, yeah, well, okay, or make him feel bad about it. Brantley just instead says, yeah, when, where. It's amazing. So I think Coach B helps. I guess it's Coach B's heart that really, to me, is he's all Purdue. He's just, again, I think that Zach does migrate towards people that have joy in their heart, and Coach B is one of those guys for sure.
Definitely. So yeah, and somebody also asked in the chat, like, what's it been like for you to watch Zach take this moment in with the fans and so many more? We've seen this start to become a documented thing where Zach takes his time with the fans after games, and I'm sure that can't be easy after the emotion of the battle, and then to turn around and you've got all these fans, all looking for their singular moment with your son, who is a rock star as much as you are, and could be National Player of the Year and probably will be. And he just is so patient with each person. And I saw him signing a baby at Mackey, I mean, he's just so gracious with his time. What has that been like for you to watch your son, be that way with the fan base?
I tweeted out the other day, we're all about Twitter somehow today, but I did tweet out beyond proud. And honestly, it is. It's hard to, even after the last game, I teared up at one point when I was just watching the screen, and I just thought, this is just such an incredible journey that they're all having, and that they're all connected. And, oh no, you're going to make me cry. Don't do this. So, it's amazing. I think the thing about Zach is that he appreciates what's given to him. Like, he knows that this is a rare thing. And it's not just for him, just in general. It's a rare thing to have this kind of, I don't know, people just wanting to, be with him and accept him. And, he just appreciates it. And so for me, it just makes my heart super full. That's pretty much probably all I could just say.
Yeah.
It's super full.
As it should. It's fun to watch, the smiles he brings to other people, but also his smile poking out more times than not here in the last couple of weeks. has been a lot of fun to see because I know how serious he is, staring at that when he's at the free throw line. I don't think I've ever seen a more serious look. He's just locked into that rim, and to watch you guys take in these moments, you guys deserve it. And I'm happy for you both. And it's been a lot of fun to cover this team. All four of us have been doing this, and it's been a fun year, and we've been growing, and it's because of Purdue's success, and your son's such a huge part of that. And we appreciate it. He came on this show and gave us so much of his time. So to see like pictures like this where you just see the joy on his face, like for me and all these guys here covering this team, it's just it's fun to watch. This team is a breath of fresh air, and they have been since the first day they came out there and dribbled the basketball in a regular season game. And even that scrimmage, you could tell that these guys had something. And you know me, Julia, I'm all over. Look at it. I'm right over Zach's shoulder there, trying to stay down from the cameras. I was all over the place trying to get as many good shots as I could. This is probably my favorite shot of Zach, though. If he can go out and win the damn thing, this shot is a million. March is Edey. That's going to be the new saying here on Boilers in the Stands. And I also want to say, he took the time to take a picture with my daughter this was 2 years ago, and she's catching up on him, just so you know. She's starting to get up there. She's a lot taller than she is even in that picture. So we appreciate Zach so much, and we appreciate your time tonight. I know everybody in the chat and these guys here alongside me can't thank you enough. It's been a lot of fun talking with you. There was the shopping cart picture. I saw this on your timeline. I don't know if I have it in here anymore.
Yeah.
Now I'm like, Matt, I can't even see. My eyes are hurting. But maybe talk about this. I don't have it. Now I'm frustrated.
Yeah, it was down when he was down at IMG. I used to visit him down there all the time, and because it was hard. He's talked about it. He was homesick, and it's hard. You're 16 years old and you're down playing a sport they haven't played before. They were great and everything, but so it was just this one time we were at the store loading them up with granola bars and whatever else he wanted. And he decided he was just goofing around. He decided to hop in the shopping cart. And I said, I'm going to take a picture of this. So
I saw that on your timeline, and I thought I loaded it today, but through my prep, I must have left it out. So I wanted to hear that story. But Julia, thanks again for everything. We got one more request for you, because just like everybody else that comes on this show, that's Purdue royalty. Just like your son, you're Purdue royalty. Yes, you are.
It's Zach Edey with Purdue men's basketball, and you're watching Boilers in the Stands.
Zach got it done, I think, in 2 takes. Ethan was 1.
This is Ethan Morton from Purdue men's basketball, and you're watching Boilers in the Stands.
We need you. We need, the Queen of West Lafayette introducing this show. We'll clip it, and then we'll start our shows sometimes with it. We like to mix it up. So if you don't mind, our last request is a little Boilers in the Stands shout out. So all you have to do is basically say who you are, and you're listening to Boilers in the Stands.
Okay.
You good? All right. I'm going to put you on the solo shot here. Get your name pulled up, and then I'll give you the countdown. In 3, 2, 1.
Hi, this is Julia Edey, mom of Purdue basketball player Zach Edey, and you're watching Boilers in the Stands. I get that?
That was great. That was great. I mean, if you want to do it again, you can. It's up to you. If you want to go as far to call him National Player of the Year, we won't hold it against you. So, but it's up to you. You can say whatever you want, but we'll give you the countdown in 3, 2, 1.
This is Julia Edey from Purdue men's basketball, one of the moms, and this is Boilers in the Stands.
Love it.
I can't say it.
No, I get it. He's got to win it first. He's got to win it first.
You can't jinx these things. You can't.
I get it. I 100% get it. But he's getting that trophy or there will be riots. I will make sure of it. I will storm whatever doors of the people that decide it. I was mad enough last week when Coach Painter didn't get Big Ten Coach of the Year. When that's a story for another day. But we'll let you go and get to bed. We really appreciate all your time, Julie. I cannot thank you enough. I owe you one. I know everybody that watched this, and there's going to be thousands of Purdue fans that will come back to watch this later. There's you broke Zach Edey's record for how many people came in the chat here today, so you can flex on Zach for that.
Right.
And I know how much people are going to enjoy that.
I think your live numbers are almost double, Zach. So you can flex a little bit there.
Flex on Zach. You got him on that.
All right.
Everybody's excited for March, and we appreciate you giving us some of your time. And these stories were really great. So we'll let you go, and we'll see you in Columbus. Kraig will be there Friday. I'll be there Sunday along with Kraig, and I'll give you a big hug and thank you for this because I really appreciate it. Yep.
Absolutely. No problem. We'll see you there.
All right, boiler up.
Bye.
Okay, hammer down.
Yep, that's Julia Edey. Well, that's the thing. I don't know. So, the Queen of West Lafayette. That's what she should have said. She probably wouldn't have said that either, though. That's okay. She's a very humble family, and we appreciate her time. And we appreciate everybody tuning in. Don't jump out of here because we're gonna talk a little bit about Purdue's road to the Final Four. These guys break it down better than anybody in the business as far as I'm concerned. So we're going to get right into that. Please hit that like button if you are taking off to go to bed or do whatever you're doing. We completely understand. Or tune in later for the rest of what we're going to talk about here as far as March Madness is concerned. But before we do, I got to give a shout out to our sponsors over at Fanbags Cornhole, Chicago's official supplier of professional cornhole boards and bags. Our guys are doing a great job, supporting us, so we want to make sure we support them. So that Julia Edey interview was brought to you by Fanbags Cornhole, Chicago's official supplier of professional cornhole boards and bags. Choose from any of their officially licensed designs or have my boy Brian design a custom set using anything from a selfie to your company's logo. Visit www.fanbagscornhole.com and use the promo code BRAGS to get 10% off your entire order. That's www.fanbagscornhole.com and use the promo code BRAGS for 10% off. Step up your game with Fanbags Cornhole. And then I also want to shout out our guys over at Mad Mushroom Pizza. Make sure you're using our coupon code BITS for 15% off any order you make. You want the best pizza in the game or the best cheese sticks in the game, make sure you're ordering Mad Mushroom Pizza. We appreciate both of those guys for supporting us here at Boilers in the Stands. So let's get right into it, guys. March Madness is upon us. We don't know who we're playing on Friday. So I'm going to start with you, Joe. You've been doing a lot of breakdowns of the teams we could potentially play. No, we talked a little bit about it before Julie came on, but a lot of people have hopped in since. What are your thoughts here going into the March Madness tournament and the road for Purdue?
Yeah, and we can just kind of start in order. We'll start with the 16s, and on my Twitter at Joe_Jackson2210 there, I have done film threads of both teams. So if you're like me and hadn't watched anybody or either of these teams, Texas Southern or Fairleigh Dickinson, before this, you can go check that out. But yeah, the 16 matchup. Fairleigh Dickinson is the smallest team in the country. They have nobody over 6'6". Zach Edey is a foot taller than everybody on their team except for two players, which is just kind of funny to think about. So that's a matchup where I think Edey could kind of just pick the number he wants to score, unless they literally triple team him. And then there's Texas Southern, who's not a good offensive team. They really just have one dude in PJ Henry. He's 5'10", just super, super quick guard. He put up one of the games I watched, he put up 41. So he has that just kind of scoring ability. They have some 6'9" kind of linky dudes, 6'7" dudes, some wings that, have given Purdue issues before. So in terms of the 16, I think, everybody's going to be like, what kind of matchup do you want? Like, which team would you prefer? The answer, first of all, is just Purdue should just beat both. It shouldn't matter. But Fairleigh Dickinson would probably be, Edey might be able to get his numbers easier. But Texas Southern, I think, kind of is a better. They're not nowhere near what Memphis is talent wise, but they have this similar makeup of a really dynamic guard, some 6'7", some 6'9" dudes that can make some plays. They have a 6'9" lanky dude just like Williams on Memphis. So, I think that might be an interesting matchup if Purdue does get them in that that very first round. And then from there it's wide open. As we said, the 8-9 matchup will be tough, and we'll get into that. I know Aiden's watched both teams a bunch. I've watched a bit, and you guys as well. So we'll get into that. But if you can get past 8-9, it's pretty wide open.
Yeah, and I think
and
some
Brad
of those 16
Prather says, we were taller than St. Peter's too. That's not automatic, and he's right. And Matt Painter said, in multiple pressers that it's not about how big you are; it's about how willing you are to fight. And can Zach Edey break your spirit? The difference between last year and this year is Zach Edey's playing 35 minutes a game if he wants. And he's been staying out of foul trouble this year. I think that's probably the biggest key to Zach Edey and Purdue's success in the postseason is that he continues to stay out of foul trouble. Because nothing against Travion Williams, but Zach Edey poses such a mismatch nightmare. If he can stay out of foul trouble, if you rewind that game back and you have Zach Edey play 35 minutes against St. Peter's, good luck to you because he can break your spirit unlike most bigs can. Go ahead, Aidan.
Yeah, I think Joe hit it right on the head from what I've seen from the 16s. Like either one would kind of be an interesting matchup. I look at Fairleigh Dickinson. I mean, not only is their tallest player 6'6", their player who weighs the most is 222. So you think about that going up against, 7'4", 310 or whatever, Edey's weight is, like that's pretty crazy. They would definitely try to just spread us out, shoot a million threes, right, Joe? I would have to assume, in that matchup, and they could. I mean, they have a 6'6", excuse me, a 6'6" kid who's shooting 70 or 37% from the line or from three. So I think Fairleigh would be funny kind of to watch, but I do think Texas Southern would be maybe the more difficult matchup, but maybe the matchup we want in that they will pressure us. They will try to play fast. They have D1 high major level athletes. Texas Southern is a place where a lot of times they get transfers down from bigger schools. And so I think they could potentially represent a Memphis or even an FAU a little bit better than Fairleigh Dickinson. It is a unique situation for those guys because if you're the coach at Texas Southern or the coach at Fairleigh Dickinson, like you want to win a game. And so you want to win that game tomorrow night, and your prep will be completely or mostly at least on that game because you don't have a chance to play on national TV very often. So if you're thinking about, getting more job equity, if I'm Johnny Jones at Texas Southern or if I'm the coach at Fairleigh Dickinson, like I really am putting all my prep into that game, and then we're going to just kind of go play on Friday against Purdue. So it'll be an interesting thing, and we could get into Memphis FAU a little bit later here. Kraig, I don't know if you have any thoughts on the 16s. Obviously, want to kind of blow them out, but
no. The only thing I'll add to the conversation is I do think it's fairly amusing that we have a chance to play the exact same first three teams that we played in 1988. Which Braggs, I know your fandom didn't start yet then. And I don't
my life had barely started back then. I was 3 years old.
Well, I was only 11. But that was the three amigos. That was the three amigos with Troy Lewis, Everett Stevens. I can't remember who the third one is now. Somebody in the chat will remind me. But we played Fairleigh Dickinson, Memphis, and Kansas State that year in the first three games. So I think it's just kind of wild that we could have the exact same matchups that we had like 30 some years ago. Is kind of crazy. But yeah, I mean, regardless, I think people kept saying all year, the 1 seed doesn't matter. I should say some people kept saying that. It does matter because Purdue just needs to go out and be Purdue against the 16 seeds. There doesn't need to be a lot of changing of what you're doing, that type of stuff. You just need to go and do what Purdue does best. So that gives you time for your assistants and graduate assistants to do a lot of scout on Memphis and FAU for that second round game. Now, I realize it has happened once with Virginia that 1 year, but that's one time in the history of the game. So you should feel a little comfortable. Just go be you, do what you do really well, and let's let the assistants get some scout in on the next two teams where it might be more challenging.
Todd Mitchell was the third name that people are bringing up.
That's right.
So
I think this is the official Memphis Grizzlies account, guys. I think they're tuning in.
Hey, welcome. I mean, we've had some troll accounts jumping in here. I don't even want to say troll accounts, just fans from other teams jumping in our show. So trying to get the scouting report. We know what you're up to. We're not going to block you, but we're watching you. Okay, Memphis Grizz, you just behave in there, and you worry about your boy Ja getting right so he can go back in exciting NBA crowds.
He's going to get some counseling.
Yeah, all due respect. I like
counseling.
So I ain't trying to poke fun at a serious thing, but it said Memphis Grizzlies, and I know that's probably at the forefront of his mind. But I do like Ja Morant. So I don't know. Do you guys want to touch any more on 16, or do you want to move to Memphis and Florida Atlantic?
I'll just say I do think it presents an opportunity for a Fletcher Lawyer to see a couple go down in the same gym that they'll be shooting in, on Sunday. So I don't know if that means anything, but I know that they're going to be pumping him up all game on Friday and let it fly. And hopefully, you go 5 for 8, and now Sunday you've got some confidence as a shooter. So that'd be the last thing I'd say.
Yeah, I'm with you there.
He's the missing link, right? I mean, we said this to start the show. Like, if he can get hot, or maybe I said it in the last show I was in, but if he can get hot, it changes the dynamic of this team. Now, David Jenkins and Brandon Newman have brought a new wrinkle to this team. Like, if you're going to watch tape on them all year, you're not going to see too much of what Brandon Newman and David Jenkins have become here in the last 4 games. So, and that's great because that gives teams something else to think about. It's new rotations and new, lineup combinations that Matt Painter's putting out there that teams don't have too much on. Although, I mean, Purdue mostly runs the same kind of sets no matter who the player is. But at the end of the day, to your point, if Fletcher Lawyer can see a few go down, start to get used to this basketball a little more, I felt like he, was playing with a little more confidence against Penn State, then maybe we can get the Fletcher Lawyer that was such a big part of the reason Purdue is a 1 seed right now. He is a clutch player that just needs to get his confidence back. And if he can, it's going to set things up really nicely for Purdue going forward.
Yeah, like you said, he's honestly the only one out of the whole team that I think hasn't played well in the past few games. And like Jenkins has kind of become this guy of, okay, he can randomly get 10, 15 points off the bench. And JB brought up a good point. This will be the first game to get him to 2,000, possibly in one of the 16. So if there's a big lead, I wouldn't be shocked to see that for Jenkins. But yeah, if you can get Lawyer going, like it's just another wrinkle. Like now Lawyer is better from 3. You have to worry about that even more. Jenkins comes in, he's hitting. Newman's playing phenomenally. And then now it's just across the board. TKR has been good off the bench, and you want everybody to be clicking. The March Madness is as much skill as it is just timing and some variance, as we said. So, real quick before I think we'll move on to probably Memphis FAU. Fairleigh Dickinson, if Purdue gets them, they press more than every other team in the country. So, just wanted to throw that out there. It's a very, very weak press. They have like the 3rd worst defense in the country. So it's kind of misleading. It's if you get past the first 2 guys, you pretty much just have a wide open shot. But, I think it's just kind of funny with how the conversation has been about Purdue with pressing that is a potential opponent.
So I don't know. Did Rutgers lose in the NIT?
Yeah.
Did that just happen? Who'd they lose to?
Yep. Hofstra.
Who Purdue beat earlier this year. Without Hofstra's best player, though, I think.
Yeah, but looking at the stats real quick, it looks like maybe Rutgers was not bought into this game because that's not the normal defensive stats you see from Rutgers at all. And you never know when you don't make the NCAA tourney, you don't know where players' heads are and how committed they are to that. Michigan struggled with Toledo a little bit out of the gate and then ended up beating them. But I feel terrible for Rutgers. I thought that was one of the worst leaving a team out that the selection committee's done in 20 years. So,
yeah. And Brad Prather says, and this was something I was definitely tracking during the championship game. He was 22 points away to start the championship game, had 11 points in the first half, and now he's only 11 away. David Jenkins Jr. is from 2,000 points on his career. I was really hoping in the second half he could get some to fall to like be close enough to where this isn't even. So the one thing in the 16C game that I am hoping for outside of Fletcher Loyer getting hot is David getting that out of the way. So when you go into these next games, not selling anything short to the 16C because we know they've won once, but something as silly as 2,000 points, but it's not silly for David. And I know how much it means to him. He even said as much when we had him on the show for an interview. And that was also a great interview. You can go back and watch. So I'm rooting for David to break the 2,000 barrier, that 16C game. So he doesn't have to think about that the rest of the way.
Yeah, for sure. It'd be big just to get that out of the way. Just looking at other scores, and I think gotta give a quick shout out to Lutz over at A&M Corpus Christi. I think they picked up a 4-point win today. And the first four for March Madness, so they'll get Alabama now. But former Purdue assistant coach, head coach now. I think is that 2 straight years with the W for him. I know they made it.
They played in the first 4 both years, and he won. He has a hot name, by the way, on the coaching carousel. I've heard his name linked at several different opportunities. I think you could see him jump this year or the next year for a kind of a la Micah Shrewsbury and go get a Power 5 type job or even a AAC. I've heard his name with Wichita State. So Steve Lutz is definitely an up-and-comer, former Painter assistant.
Okay, let's move on to the next round for Purdue. We're going to focus in on Purdue's road. And if Joe and Aidan want to go live tomorrow night to break down the entire bracket and all the different things and help people with filling out their brackets, we haven't talked about this because we've been so busy this week, but you guys are welcome to do so. I'm not trying to put you on the spot. So we're going to keep this conversation tonight to a Purdue focus as far as their road. So we're going to move on to this next round of potential and maybe talk about, lightly talk about if they were to get through, but we'll save some of that conversation if and when they actually do get through, because then we'll have a whole new week, another week of coverage, but we can at least talk about the map and some of the potential matchups past the 8-9, but nobody is overlooking the 8-9 matchup. I think Purdue fans know better. At this point, in March, things have never gone right in a lot of ways, no matter what the seed was, including last year. So now you have Memphis and Florida Atlantic as the potential of one of these two teams facing off against Purdue on Sunday in Columbus, Ohio. Kraig, I'll start with you, and then we'll kick it around. When you look at these two teams, is there a preference of who you want to play and your bead on these two teams?
I mean, yeah. I without a doubt, I'd rather play FAU, and I think FAU does some things really, really well. But when we've seen them play high major competition this year, they've struggled. I think that some of that is just struggling with size that some of that high major competition brings. I think they can score the ball at a high clip, but I think that's definitely the better matchup. Obviously, concern with Purdue is playing high pressure defense. Memphis doesn't really press full court press all that much, but they do a lot of like jumping at half court trap type things, and they put a lot of on ball pressure just off the dribble. So I think they can be problematic in a Maryland type way. I guess Maryland Northwestern type way is the way I see them in terms of really putting a lot of pressure on the ball handler and making it hard to get the ball into Zach. Obviously, they could decide to go ahead and do some full court press stuff. I still think we just have the horses. If you look at their they made a really good run in their conference tournament, but their 3-point shooting got hot during that time. Most of the clips that I watched, I know Joe put some stuff about them back cutting, but a lot of their clips were just guys going one-on-one and pulling up for jump shots. And I think they just got hot in that tournament, and then they didn't have to play Houston without their best player. So I think we can still beat Memphis. And I think if you look at most of the talking heads around the country, it's either this round or Final Four for Purdue. Like that's kind of their thought process in terms of where they're at. So yeah, I'd rather see FAU. I think Purdue can handle both teams. We've seen, I guess the other team maybe I'd compare them to a little bit, and Joe and Aidan, you can correct me if I'm wrong because you've watched way more tape, is a team like West Virginia where we turned the ball over 18 times, but our rebounding and free throw margin was so huge when we didn't turn the ball over that it didn't matter. We were still able to pull through and beat them.
Yeah, and I think you're right there. And I have some numbers pulled up, like just the four factors. Memphis is 322nd in defensive rebound percentage. Purdue is Purdue still Purdue? If Purdue isn't one in offensive rebound percentage, they're like number 2. And then they're also 270th in defensive free throw rates. So basically, that just means they foul a lot. So they do force a lot of turnovers, but like you said, they can get in foul trouble. The bit I've seen, their number 2, DeAndre Williams, he kind of seems like he could be foul heavy at times. Even some of their other bigs, I think, can do that. But then, they have Kendrick Davis, who's one of the best guards in the country. Can just, in one of the clips, Memphis likes to push the ball, make or miss. Kendrick Davis is really fast. He just, after a make, just kind of jogs it up, gets an empty side pick and roll, splits the defenders, and then splits 2 more defenders as he finishes. And it's just plays like that. It's just like, man, that's tough to guard no matter who you are. Houston's one of the best defensive teams, and they still have issues with them. So there's that issue too. I don't know. I go back and forth with Memphis because it's like you have, like I said, one of the best guards, period, in Kendrick Davis. They do press like that jump trap, like you said. I've seen them throw out like a 1-2-2 type or a 2-2-1 into like a 2-3 a little bit. But also, like, if they get in foul trouble, Edey gets dominant on the boards. Like, I don't know if it matters too much. FAU scares me because from the bit I've seen, they just don't make too many mistakes. They move the ball really well. They find open guys from 3. They have a lot of shooters. So I'm worried about them getting hot, I guess. But I'll throw it to you, Aidan. What are your kind of thoughts on whichever team you want to start with?
Yeah, I agree with Memphis. I think they're tough. I think Davis is probably the best guard we've seen this season, assuming if we see him. Obviously, Hood Schifino, the way he played at Mackey would change that. But overall, Hood Schifino's not been better than Davis this season. Maybe there's other guys I'm forgetting, but I do think Davis is really, really good. I think he's definitely a guy.
But
I was going to say better than Pickett. Maybe because of the way Pickett plays and he wants to get in the post and Zach's going to disrupt him. Yeah,
it's different. But I think that's a fair call out there. But I do think he's going to take a lot of mid-range jumpers that Purdue will give him. I think this will be a game where Memphis tries really basic things like a lot of ball screens, a lot of Chicago action, just to get him into those spots where he can shoot his floater. He can shoot from the mid-range. It's interesting. Like, these guys haven't seen anyone like Zach Edey where you really just can't shoot around the rim, and I think that's a huge factor that I don't really know how they'll handle that, especially on one-day prep. Like, a big part of Davis's game is getting all the way to the rim and finishing,
Memphis in general.
Memphis in general, they like to attack closeouts. They go hard to the rim. They've got real athletes, as we know. And they got real athletes who you have to respect as shooters. And that's one thing that I do like about them is their guys shoot a good percentage. A lot of these teams, like we saw with Duke, they had that guy, Mark Mitchell, where you could just kind of leave him in the corner and he was a 6'9", wing. But again, you weren't scared of him to shoot. You could pack it in or put Edey on him or whatever. There isn't that many, maybe a little bit off Memphis's bench, but the guys they start can pretty consistently knock down shots. And so it's going to be an interesting matchup. Purdue will obviously be smaller than Memphis. It'd be interesting to see. I assume they put Newman on Davis, and then Smith would have to take someone who's 6'5" or something, 6'7". I mean,
that's what I wanted to ask.
He's been doing that all year. So I think they'd be fine with it.
Okay.
I think Memphis would hunt Lawyer for sure. That seems to me like an easy. Again, you think about it on one-day prep. What's an easy thing watching Purdue that jumps out? Oh, okay, we can go at Fletcher Lawyer. So it's things like that they'll, I think, consider doing. I think Memphis is very NBA based in that they'll set a lot of ball screens, they'll run in transition, and they'll hunt mismatches. And so we'll see how that plays out. I don't think it's like the worst matchup in the world. They are physical, but I think it's going to be one of those games where if they're not calling stuff and letting Memphis get away with physicality, like we've seen that game this year, and it doesn't really end well for Purdue. So it is a game where, go ahead, Greg.
I was just gonna. I pulled this comment up from Brad because I thought the same thing.
Yeah.
I was gonna jump in between the two of you and just say, this is a game to me where if the referees are not in our, I don't want to say in our favor, but if the refs aren't calling it like they should, this is a game that could. I think if the game gets called like it should, we'll be fine. But if the refs are letting a whole bunch of physicality go and not calling fouls for Zach when he's trying to attack the rim and that type of stuff, then that changes the dynamic of this game, and I think it can get a little sideways. So,
right,
I totally agree.
You know, people say, well, it hasn't gone well for Purdue in games that get physicality. They've only been blown out by what? Maryland and IU. IU took it to them. Maryland. And then outside of that, even the games
Maryland wasn't a blowout, was it?
By the end, it was.
Maryland was the blowout. They went on a crazy run. They just hit everything.
Both the Purdue and IU games where they lost, one at Mackey, one at Maryland, Purdue was leading to start the second half of both games. Yeah. So they ended in blowouts. So I'm just trying to be fair to it. But my point is, even, for the teams that do get physical with us, Purdue still has a chance to win at the end. The Rutgers game to start the Big Ten tournament was as physical a game as any game has been all season, and the refs were as inconsistent as any referee officiating crew as I've seen all season. We forgot to bring Isaiah on that night to yell at him about that. And, but Purdue still won the day. Purdue fought, and you're seeing more of that. Mason Gillis is emerging as the guy that we all know him to be. He is, there was a clip they showed against Penn State where he got to the floor twice that led to a Zach Edey bucket. He's doing his thing. Caleb First is willing to get in the fight. Brandon Newman, our guy, Bitcoin is Freedom, is in the chat, gracing us with his presence and basketball acumen. Brandon Newman's been getting in the fight. If a team wants to get physical and the refs aren't going to call it, Purdue's been down this road. Purdue is prepared for that moment. Is the game going to be pretty? No, but does that mean Purdue's definitely going to lose? No, because they've been prepared for these moments.
Yeah, and I think one thing that stood out in the Big Ten tourney, and obviously Penn State and Ohio State are very good matchups for Purdue, just straight up, right? Like they don't have anybody that can even really come close to guarding Edey one-on-one. Although I do think Akpar is going to be very, very good at some point in his career. Purdue's letting the lead slip in the second half. And we talked about all the lineup adjustments, whatever. We're not going to go into that here. You can watch the last live show if you want to catch all that stuff. But Edey gets triple teamed up 4. Penn State's on this run, and Edey just didn't care. He up fake, step through, gets to the rim. He had a little bit of that in Ohio State too, of just like get on my back, like we're winning this. I don't really care how. I'm not going to be passive. Those weren't the most physical games, so he still has to do that with this physicality that he just is going to have to endure no matter what. But that was an encouraging sign to me of you have the National Player of the Year willing just at that point that we haven't always seen. He wants to make the right reads when he gets doubled and tripled. But that was one where he's just like, I don't care. Like we are winning this game, and we have to do that by me scoring right now. I think that's a positive sign. Maybe that's just me overreacting to one play, but I think that's a big sign going ahead of Edey might just that's the whole thing that gets, I think, lost when we talk about Memphis and, their elite guard, and they have, Williams is phenomenal. They have to figure out how to guard Edey too. And yeah, like you said, I think you've brought up, the refs is a fair thing to bring up too, but at some point, like Edey might just be Zach Edey and it won't matter.
Well, sure. And it wasn't just that one game. It happened a couple. I was watching back through the Big Ten championship clips and from the regular season because there was a moment in the Illinois game too down the stretch where he got triple teamed. Yeah, I don't know what that is. I don't know what shinny is either. and drop step through 3 guys and just went over them when we had to have a bucket. And I'm with you, Joe. I think that's a really positive sign of Zach realizing, like, in critical moments, or if the game gets super close, like, it doesn't matter if they send 2 or 3 at me. I can still get mine, and I'm gonna go get mine. And Bitcoin is freedom. Like, man, I love you, man. I love the points you brought up about Brandon, but if you're telling me the NBA doesn't play defense in the chat, you don't watch the NBA, and just lay off the Ivy thing. I'm sick of it. Get out of the chat with that.
Yeah. Well, he's been vocal in the comments about last year's team, but we're done with last year. We get it, but we're here to march for this team. Let's see what these guys can do.
Did you have something?
Yeah, for sure. Maybe we switch it over to FAU now. I mean, again, I do think this is a team that matches up fairly well with Memphis. You look at FAU; they're a real modern offense, pace and space, kick the ball ahead in transition. You know, they can play a quick style, and so does Memphis. You know, both teams are going to try to run a little bit. With FAU, it's just about the team. Like, they got a ton of guys who contribute. Their top 7 is really, really solid, led by a kid named John L. Davis, who was actually from Gary, Indiana, and was a great recruiting get for Dusty May down there. He's a 6'4" kid who really shoots it and can kind of score at all 3 levels. Started the season off the bench. I believe now he's starting, if I'm correct on that. But yeah, they're a solid team.
And the last few games too.
Yeah, he's really picked it up. So good to see kids from Indiana. I always like seeing that. You know, they are good on the offensive boards. They really crash hard, and they just really shoot it. They're just a team that could hit 12 threes and just kind of beat Memphis that way. You know, I think Memphis can get up into their guards for sure. I definitely think that's an aspect of this game that has to be looked at. But I do think FAU style, FAU shooting, could be pretty problematic for Memphis in this game. And I think the way they play, the depth they have is something that if they can just slow down Davis and Williams, Memphis's kind of dynamic duo there, then I think FAU should win the ball game. I really do.
Yeah, and FAU just doesn't make mistakes. Like, they're good on both ends. I guess the biggest concern, right, is you're looking through their schedule. Lost at Mississippi. They beat Florida early in the season, and then got a good win at North Texas. But aside from that, it's not like they've been playing these great teams. Now, you got to play who's in front of you, and they've won 31 of their 34 games. So at some point, like, you're doing something right. So I'm not taking away from them, and definitely think they should be at least a 9 seed. They've been good. They're a team that attempts a lot of threes. No, I was going to say they're kind of like Penn State, but Penn State's so unique with Pickett. But the similar concept of put up as many threes really as you want, and they're going to knock them down. 39th in three-point attempt rate at 43.8% of their shots are threes. They make 37.2 of them, which is 30th in the country. Good inside. They have a 7'1" kid that, from the bit I've watched, he looks solid. He looks, he plays about 20, 25 minutes a game. He's a little on the lighter side at 240 is what he's listed at. So, but that's a guy with size that can get stuff going down low. I don't know how much do you think he's a legit post presence? He's better. I know he's definitely better than just like the you're out here because you're tall type guy. But he's not like the dynamic, like, I'm going to kind of dominate this game, right?
No, I don't see that. I think maybe kind of a Steven Crowell type maybe would be a decent comparison. I don't know, just like I can score. He's not going to shoot the 3 like Crowell, but I can score. I can initiate offense in the low post. Like, I've got a decent hook, but I'm not gonna, there's no way I'm taking over the game, especially against Zach Edey. So I think
he's not dominant just because he's tall, is what you're saying?
No, definitely not. Definitely not. He has improved. I mean, he started off at Texas Tech, and he's sort of improved over a couple of years here. But yeah, I don't think and I really think you can go at him on the other end. He's not real mobile. I don't think he's particularly strong. I just think he's a guy who Edey can just dominate. And if they decide just because he's 7'1" to single cover Edey, like that would be a mistake. But they might not. They may bring a double, and I think they would be wise to.
And or if you got something, Braggs, go for it.
Nope, just listening along, watching the chat and stuff, and enjoying the conversation.
And I think like the Edey against St. Peter's is not the Edey of this year, like at all. So I see some people bring that up.
Right.
Like this guy is way more composed. He's way better. It's just
stays out of foul trouble.
Player. Yeah, it's just
never played 35 minutes in a game. How many times do you think this year he's played 34 minutes or more in a game? A lot.
I can tell you the exact number if you want.
And while Joe looks for that stat, I mean, while there's so many improvements he's made in his game this year from technique standpoint, the fact that he's able to play so many minutes each game, I think is his biggest attribute. And last year, I mean, stamina-wise, he may have always been able to do that. But discipline-wise, to Aiden's point, he was getting in foul trouble with half the minutes he had last year. And this year, he's not doing that. He's playing straight up. He's not getting frustration fouls as much. And, the Big Ten can be as frustrating as it comes. So, doesn't mean that scenario can't come along. It certainly can. But at this point, Zach has proven that he can be trusted to make the right decisions. And I think he knows how important he is to this team to not take a cheap foul or a frustration foul and put this team in jeopardy. But, it's not out of the realm of possibility. But I just think compared to this year and last year, there's a trust factor as far as I'm concerned, knowing how Zach's going to approach this tournament.
Yeah, I looked it up, 13 that he's played 33 minutes or more. And then you talk about the fouls, like I'm looking, he's gotten 4 fouls twice this whole year, and they were both within the first 4 games.
I mean, that's a tweet. That's a tweet worthy thing right there, Joe. I mean, and that's just a mind blowing stat. 13 times you said over 33 minutes or more, and only 2 times where he ever fouled 4 times in a game. He's never fouled out of a game all year.
No, that's wild. And there'll be the people that be like, why does he not get called for fouls? And we've been over all this of, hey, maybe you should actually attack Zach Edey at the rim and maybe you'll get a foul call. But then also, like you said, like he knows how valuable he is to this team. And Painter, it sounds like Painter and the coaching staff, the team are just like, hey, if you're semi-beat at the rim, you're not really going to get it. And it's not like a crazy pivotal spot. Just let him have it. If he's going to be there and actually contest and he feels good, that's the better option. But you're more valuable than this two points with 12 minutes left in the first half. You're more valuable than just those 2 points that can be given up.
And before I make my other point on Zach and Matt Painter and the way he handled him in the last game, Jeff Parks brings up a great point. Yeah, he says, I control my chat. I don't want to listen to negativity, so Bitcoin is no longer in my chat. And that's fair, Jeff. If there's people in the chat, because we've had a lot of people in tonight that tuned into a really great interview with Julia, some getting to know some people that maybe hasn't come along the chat this year as much, and that's fine. I'm not kicking people out of this chat. If you guys want to have a differentiating opinion and have some back and forth, have at it. The only way you're going to get booted in here is if you get personal and disrespectful towards one another. So I'll let the discourse handle itself. You guys are all grown men in there. But at the end of the day, like Jeff said, if you want to block a guy because you don't want to hear it and he's putting too much up and he's spamming the chat, have at it. Block away. That's your own choice. Moving on from that point, but I just see everybody going back and forth with last year's team and all this stuff, and that's fine. Have at it. Have fun. Talk Purdue basketball. That's what this is for. To vent. And I like Bitcoin is freedom. I know he gets everybody fired up. He certainly was going at me to start the year, but he was right on Brandon Newman, so I'll give him his credit where credit is due. But to the other point, when it comes to Zach Edey, do you think Matt Painter learned his lesson for the way he handled Zach, pulling him out of the game? I know he was trying to do an offensive and defensive switch. He was talking about after the game how Penn State went small, and that was some of the stuff. But even before that, I thought he let TKR get a little too much run in that 11-10, 9-minute mark as the second half was getting like halfway through. Then he starts doing the offense-defense switch, and at that point, I thought Purdue should have put the game away. Do you think Matt Painter learned his lesson from that Penn State game and how he handled Zach? I'll start with you, Kraig, and then if you guys have any thoughts after that, go ahead.
Yes. I think Matt Painter is a very intelligent person. I think he's going to go back and watch that tape and realize that any advantage they were picking up on the defensive end, they were giving away two-folds over on the offensive end by not having Zach out there. Because when you decide to start making that, and he's done it multiple times this year, right? But it's mainly been with Fletcher and Ethan, or Fletcher and Brandon, starting at the 5-minute mark in games. And you can live with that a little bit more because you still have your stud in there offensively. But for whatever reason, this game, he decided to start doing that with Zach and TKR super early too. And I realize on paper, maybe it looks like that. Like, all we got to do, we've got a big lead. All we got to do is maintain ourselves on the defensive end. But then there were too many times where there wasn't stoppage in play and the ball came back to the other end. And then we were, greatly at an offensive disadvantage because we didn't have our National Player of the Year candidate out there on the offensive end. Not to mention, you don't have him out there for defensive rebounding. So I think he's going to watch that tape and realize that I don't want to say got too cute, but I think he's going to watch that tape and maybe think that he outthought himself a little bit in that process. Yeah. And not only that, but we saw a time or two where against the press, when they needed bailed out, that they just like fired a 30-foot bullet to Zach down court. And that's a nice option to have in that situation when you only got one guy and Zach could just box him out and catch a pass all the way down there.
Yeah, I'm on team camp of Matt Painter is good at his job. So he'll look and he'll see. And there was definitely, you gave up some defense because they drove a little bit more. Part of it might have just been they got more aggressive. I don't know. I thought the bigger thing, even on offense, was they just went away from what was working against the zone. Like, they were having some success, and Braden missed a floater in the lane, but they were having some success just setting a ball screen on the top outer guy, like swinging to Braden, ball screen top outer guy, letting him get in the paints. And I thought they just went away from it, and that would have hurt too. I think if they stuck with that, it might have been a completely different. We might have looked back and been like, okay, this wasn't as bad as we thought. I thought that was a big thing too, of even with the lineups that they did that. But no, I do agree. I think we won't see it, or if we do, it'll be a pretty short leash. You can maybe see it against Memphis, depending on if they put Williams. Oh my gosh, if they put Williams at the 5, he's kind of a lanky. He's more of like a point forward almost. So if they put him at the 5, maybe you throw TKR just because you want a little more mobility. I think it'll just have a shorter leash though. And then I don't see it coming against FAU, as I know we were talking about them a bit too.
Yeah, and one of the things that intrigues me about both of these games is, or maybe not intrigues might not be the right word, but Zach is going to have to be dominant on the defensive glass. Mm-hmm. These are two teams that really will crash hard, and they will get up a lot of threes. And so there's going to be a lot of those long rebounds. There might be some loose balls that we need Mason Gillis to get on. And if you look at Memphis, like their best performances, they've gotten a ton of offensive rebounds. The same thing with FAU. Now FAU has not seen anyone near Zach Edey, obviously, this season, other than maybe Colin Castleton in Florida. But, Memphis has seen, at least better athletes, bigger guys, whatever. I think that's going to be a real key to either of these games is like, can Edey just get you like 12 defensive boards and just go get them? And neither team is going to have a guy that will really fight Edey for him. They're going to throw probably 2 or 3 guys at him, pinch him out, try and get him off the glass and have other guys run in. But that's been such a big part of the success of both of these teams that, you almost wonder if Purdue can kind of take that away. And now Purdue's got an advantage over what these teams traditionally like to do. So I do think that's something to watch for in either of these games. Depending on who it is, it could be either of them. Like, both teams really like to get to the glass. Neither team has seen a center like Zach Edey, especially if they go small, like you said, with DeAndre Williams. I mean, he's a 6'9", like you said, point forward, pick and pop shooter. 205 though is what he weighs. So he's not going to be able to bang with Zach. And I guess I would trying to compare him to someone, that Purdue has seen, maybe like kind of a 26-year-old Filipowski or something like, I don't know exactly what, but something like that, of where like a guy who can kind of make, got some creativity to his game. But like I said, he is actually 26 years old.
He is the oldest player in D1.
26 years old. Wow.
I mean, Filipowski's a top 10 pick though. So
yeah, certainly not, Walmart brand Filipowski maybe, but they do play similarly.
Right. Are we going to get deeper into the Go ahead, Greg.
I was just going to say I wanted to apologize to everyone because I have my head down, following NFL free agency. I do Chicago Bears coverage, and former Bear running back David Montgomery just signed with division rivals, the Detroit Lions, about 10 minutes ago. So
you wanted to get this one right, huh?
Yeah, David's gone. I told everyone months
You're
ago.
on a heater.
David was gone. I was just ahead of my time, I guess, on that little breaking news. But so I apologize. I probably should have taken myself off screen with my head down that long. But fire it away with whatever you were going to take it to, Craig. I just wanted to say that to the
I was just going to say,
viewing audience.
Yeah, Joe and Aidan, who do you have coming out of the bottom half of the top of our bracket? So with the 4 or 5 games,
my initial lean is Duke. I think Duke or Oral Roberts goes over Tennessee probably, unless I don't injury bugs for Tennessee and just have had some tougher losses as of late. And everybody's picking Duke or Oral Roberts, which probably just means it's going to be Tennessee. I feel comfortable against every team. Not that, I don't think any of them are guaranteed wins, really. Even Oral Roberts, I don't think that's a guaranteed win or anything. But, I would lean Duke initially. Muted.
You're on mute, Aidan.
My lean would be Oral Roberts. I think they're really good. I really like their coach, Paul Mills. A little biased because I do know Paul a little bit, but I do think they're going to make a run
there
here.
You get big swinging, name dropping.
I know. But they do have some skilled guys. They got Max Asmus who can go off. I think he's a better guard than Jeremy Roach. And I love guard play in March. So, yeah, I'm going to go with Oral Roberts.
So, and then Oral Roberts over Tennessee?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
yep.
I do
Oral
think
Roberts
Tennessee I do think Tennessee is really sus. I've said all year I thought they were frauds and that the SEC is extremely weak beyond Alabama. Scarily enough, that team scares me coming out of the bottom half more than everybody else just because of the way they play defense. So I don't want them to win. I think Duke's playing a lot better brand of basketball, and it's hard to tell because the ACC is so freaking bad this year. But I still think Duke is playing really, really good basketball right now, and I've got them coming out of there for a Duke-Purdue rematch. Have you seen anybody like watching this Duke team? I don't know how much you guys have looked at them again, but have you seen, so many freshmen on that team, even though we played them early this year, like, the growth curve. It's going to be a different Duke team if we make it that far and Duke makes it that far.
Yeah, I've been able to watch him a little bit here, and I think the number one thing is Derek Lively. The guy was the number one recruit coming out of high school, and funnily enough, like Duke fans were excited because of the decent job he did on Edey in that game. He was actually the only guy who gave Edey any kind of trouble in that game. Big kid, 7'1", I think, like huge wingspan, rim protector kind of player. Has been playing a lot better. I think he's got 3 blocks in like 9 of his last 10 games. He had an 8-block game, something like that. So he's been solid. I think Tyrese Proctor's a guy who didn't do a ton against Purdue. Maybe he hit a couple threes in that game, actually. I think actually had a pretty good game in that game. But he has come on strong here, double figures in 6 of his last 7. And I think they've gotten steady play out of Filipowski and Roach, who were the 2 guys that obviously were good back when they played us. And I think Derek Whitehead's another guy who could kind of go off at any point. So I don't know. I don't know how to feel about that if we get there. A lot of people are obviously high on Duke. A lot of national guys taking Duke to the Final Four. at the way they're playing right now. I get it, but I don't know that they match up the best. I really don't. And if they have a guy out there who can't shoot, we see what Painter did in the first game where he just put Edey on Mark Mitchell. And just it worked pretty well. So I don't know. And I think we do have like Caleb Furst and Gillis can really give Filipowski, at least make him work. Like that's a pretty good matchup. Obviously the pick and roll kind of scares you. Lively's a bit of a lob threat, but yeah, I don't know if they're going to have to score in isolation. I think Purdue lives with that, so.
Yeah. Well, I haven't seen anybody take Duke to the Final Four that doesn't have Purdue getting ups. No.
It doesn't.
I don't see anybody taking Duke to the Final Four that doesn't have Purdue getting upset by Memphis.
Right.
Like everybody that's taking Duke is assuming that Purdue's out of the road. I haven't seen anybody pick a Duke over Purdue matchup yet. Now I haven't looked at everybody's, but they're assuming that the path is cleared for them for that matchup not to come back again.
And beyond the X's and O's scope, which you guys are much better about than I am, the thing that I said this last year too, just as far as a narrative or, the vibe going into a game, I'd rather Purdue play Duke than some team that is playing with nothing to lose. That's, like last year with St. Peter's or North Texas. Those kind of teams are just so dangerous for Purdue because the pressure is all on Purdue. Everyone wants to root against them depending on the stadium and the environment. But when you're playing a blue blood like Duke, this isn't the best version of Duke, right? And now it's Purdue versus Duke potentially. Purdue's back to being the underdog in that game, even though they're the higher seed and the better team all season. It's just a perspective, and to me, then Purdue's role in that game goes back to this underdog thing. We are the little school from West Lafayette, and we're taking on the Blue Bloods, and nobody believes in us. And while you can't find that stuff on paper, that is tangible things that happen in sports that can rally a locker room, rally a fan base, and give a different vibe in the game. And so I invite that kind of a matchup because I think Purdue will thrive in that kind of a matchup in March.
Yeah. I made the comment after the Big Ten championship of just like nobody picked Purdue to win the Big Ten outright. Nobody picked Purdue to win the Big Ten tournament. I did, but nobody that's of importance picked Purdue to win the Big Ten tournament.
You are the
hey, you're important to me, Joe. You're important to me.
But it's just I don't know if it's psychological. It's probably more just coincidental. And we as fans, we like the storylines, right? Like it's what makes sports so fun. Purdue's kind of thrived when nobody's bought into them. It's been mix of they either get upset or they get to the Final Four. There's just plenty of teams that just don't think Purdue can succeed. And I get that Purdue does need to prove it at some point and at least breaking through to the Final Four because they have been still good for the most part in the first two rounds over the recent 7-8 years or whatever the stretch has been. But I think there is something to that of just like Purdue has just done better when people have kind of picked against them.
Yeah. So let's look at the bottom half of the bracket. We're not going to go through every single team, but who do you guys see coming out of the bottom half? I've got Marquette personally.
Me too.
Who do you guys have? Huh?
I have Marquette.
I have Marquette.
And you're so confident about it, Joe.
I have Marquette.
I just don't like. It's more just like I don't trust. I guess I trust Marquette the most out of that group. Like I think Kentucky could do it. I'm not as sold on K-State, but they had 2 third-team All-American guys. Like they have firepower. Yeah, I don't really trust MSU or USC. I'll go with Marquette. They have one of the best offenses. I like Smart. Shaka Smart. And Kolek's been phenomenal, Big East Player of the Year. So I'll go them. But I'm not confident in it. I really am not.
I'd trade I'd trade our half for their half in a second, by the way.
Oh,
I mean, they got a great draw down there. Seriously, they probably got one of the best draws of any like 1 or 2 seed. If you just look at their half, I mean, I think Duke's better than K-State, and I think Memphis is definitely better than a lot of their teams.
Yeah, but at the same time, I don't like that Kentucky's like lurking as a 6th seed with all the talent they have, and if there's a team I don't want to see, like if we make it to the Elite Eight. If there's a team I don't want to see in that matchup, it's Kansas State. Like I do not want to watch Purdue's guards and wings try to guard Noel, whatever his name is, and Keontae Johnson. Like I do not want to see that matchup. I think Purdue definitely could still win that game. Obviously, they're going to have a major size advantage down low in that game, but those are the type of guards to me that have given us trouble. That just dribble drive action and being able to just break guys down one-on-one in terms of what they can do there. But yeah, no, I'm with you. I think Marquette got a really good draw, and Greg probably doesn't remember. Hopefully he'll at least vouch for me. But in that press conference, like that was real early in the season when we played Marquette, and I leaned over it because Marquette was picked like 7th or 8th in the Big East.
Right.
9th. I leaned over to Greg, and I've been a big Shaka Smart fan my whole life, so let's get that out of the way. But I leaned over to Greg, and I was like, I think this team's pretty damn good. Like just watch, like, we beat them, but I was like, man, they've got like dudes at every position that can make plays, and they're switchable, and they're athletic, and they've like their big man's not a traditional big man, but he's big enough to give and athletic enough to give other big men trouble. So like, I was like, man, I think this team's pretty good. I think they're going to be better than people think they are. And I'm glad I was proven right.
Yeah,
Greg, you remember that moment, right?
Yeah, he said that. And then I turned over to him and I was like, yeah, I think they're a 2 seed in March.
yeah. I think you even called the East too,
in the
right?
East
like,
region.
East.
I was like, I that's where I have them projected as a 2 seed in the East region. We may see them in New York. And
I need to get, I saw some app where you can record your takes and it like holds it forever and timestamps.
It's called Twitter.
No. There's this app where you put in your sport takes and it like timestamps it so you can prove to people your sport take and that it was actually timestamped on that date. I needed to have that then to prove that I called Marquette being really good back then.
Now, does the app know if you're hedging? Because like, a trick I see on Twitter, especially Chicago Bears Twitter a lot, is you just say both opinions and then just hope they're right. So does the app keep you honest? Like, no, you just said this about said topic. I'm not saying you hedge.
I'm like the Mike Golick, Mike Greenberg shtick from a long time ago. Like I'm a sheet of integrity guy. Like I only make one take. I don't hedge my bets.
I like it. But
yeah, vaulted out.
Because like what I was doing with the Bears offseason, like in the playoffs, any player that is a potential free agent or trade target, I just tweeted future Bear over whatever highlight they did. And I hit on one with Tremaine Edmonds yesterday. So nobody remembers the 40 other future Bears that didn't work out. It's just the one. They're like, Greg, you're a genius. So that's how you do the Twitter game, ladies and gentlemen.
Well, apparently we need to all take notes from Julia based on.
Yeah, Julia's got the Twitter game.
Yeah.
Can I just say that was an amazing interview. And I don't know about you guys, but the thing that stood out to me when I asked her that recruiting question, and I had no idea she would go that in depth with her answer, but I thought it was awesome, was that how little basketball she talked about. In that answer, it was family. It was this person's going to have more influence over my son in the next 4 years than I will. In terms of just interactions on a daily basis, it was the team feel and just what that atmosphere and the culture was like. She hardly mentioned basketball in her answer in terms of basketball achievement, basketball skill, other than they have a history of developing big men, and that was a short snippet of her entire answer.
There's a common phrase in the coaching circle about if you're a college basketball head coach, only 20% of what you do is basketball. And if you're an assistant, only 10% of what you do is basketball. So I do think that really shined through of the relationships that Purdue's staff is able to cultivate, and it's pretty impressive, man. Painter and Brantley and those guys do such a good job.
Yeah, you saw it on Championship Sunday against the guy across the way at Penn State, Micah Shrewsbury, and the relationships that he had with the players that still play at Purdue, giving big hugs to Ethan Morton, Brandon Newman, Zach Edey. And so that doesn't even end, even when the coach is, going up against you in a championship game. That's how tightly knit this culture is for this Purdue program, and that's a testament to Matt Painter. Probably first and foremost, but then, the way they recruit, the players they find, the coaches they bring in, and everybody kind of pulls from the same rope and has the right mentality. And that's why they kind of become somewhat of a machine here in college basketball, getting to a point now where their expectations are Final Four or national championship or bust. They have the expectation of some of these blue blood schools, even though they haven't gotten to that point yet. Gonzaga, as we mentioned earlier, they've become a blue blood, but they've gotten to Final Fours and national championships. They haven't won one, but they've gotten to Final Fours consistently enough to be in that expectation bracket. But now all of a sudden Purdue is, and it's all because of the program that Matt Painter has built and the consistency of what they're doing, even though they haven't had success in late March. But it's only a matter of time, ladies and gentlemen. We'll see if they can do it this year. But anybody, and I saw somebody put it in the comments when Julia had the answer about why she picked Purdue and because of Matt Painter and the coaching staff. Somebody put in the comments, I'm critical of Matt, and sometimes I can be hard on him as a fan. But this answer is the reason why I appreciate Matt Painter as our head coach, because not too many recruits, moms, or players that we've had so many players on this year echo these kind of sentiments. He is the sole reason why why you have expectations for this team to win a national championship. So remember that when, you think he didn't do something perfect, or if he's doing offensive and defensive switches for Edey too much, or you don't like that he doesn't go zone defense or whatever. He's built a culture and a program here that's now put them in the next echelon of teams. And so that's a testament to them. So I'm excited to see what they can do this March. Do you guys have, we just hit the 2-hour mark. I know we can go around as down the road more of what Purdue could face, but we have, I feel, more shows to get to that point if they can get through this weekend. Like I mentioned before, anybody tuning in, I think Joe and Aidan plan on going live tomorrow night.
And Kraig, I think.
That's up to you guys. I'm gonna
maybe.
Maybe.
Kraig said maybe.
It's a possibility. I had something come up. I talked to Greg about today. So it depends on what time if we could go earlier in the day, there's a chance.
Okay. We'll figure it out.
Yeah. We can chat. We can chat off screen.
Whatever's clever, as I like to say, as we talk a little production here on the show.
You say that?
I say that a lot. But these guys, and you can do the feed the post thing so we can promote what you guys are doing more here on this channel and break down the entire bracket. I don't know. Do you guys have any other thoughts or final thoughts here while we end this baby?
Some were wanting to hear about quadrants.
Yeah, we did have a few from the stars.
Are you being serious?
What?
Some?
Who, me?
People want it.
No, that's somebody being a smart ass, because Joe and I go back and forth about the quadrant stuff. But
it was because it was hashtag free Joe at the end of the last one for I wasn't allowed to.
So
the only thing I have to say is the other thing about Julia's interview was I have two brothers that majored in engineering in college, one that's still in the aeronautical engineering space for his job. And listening to Julia break down how she looked at colleges and everything, I was like, oh my God, that's such an engineer's mindset.
I know,
that's exactly how my brother would break it down.
Somebody said in the comments too, we want to see this spreadsheet. We want to see how she broke down some of these other teams. That would be really interesting to see. The other thing I wanted to ask her that I forgot just lost in the midst of the interview was when Zach was on, he said he'd like to have a food truck maybe one day after basketball. And I wanted to see what she thought on that, or if she, wanted to partner up with him and do a food truck and what that would be. But maybe I'll ask her at the game on Sunday, and I'll bring that answer to you guys here on Boilers in the Stands. Rick Mount and Joe Barry Carroll are in the chat apparently. He's been in the chat here for the last few shows, and we appreciate his support. But he says, also for the season, Zach has 736 points. In his sights are number 4, Joe Barry Carroll at 798. Number 5, Dave Shellhaas at 781. And number 6, Joe Barry Carroll at 736. So he's going to pass Joe Barry with the next bucket he makes. So there's that one. And then this is kind of the anomaly stat from Big Poon Day. Another wild stat.
Oh my God.
What? I don't know what, I had to say it, right? BP. We'll call him BP. Another wild stat since the 64 team era, teams unranked in the AP poll at the start of the season who end up being a 1 seed or a 2 seed in the tournament have never made it to a Final Four. So if Purdue gets there as an unranked team that ended up as a 1 seed, they will be the first to ever do that. So hey, trends are
there was like 6 or 7 teams total that were unranked to a 1 seed though. Like it's not like we're talking about a big data set. So
that's a good point. See, and that's why I have you guys here to help me out with those kind of thoughts and stats. Yes, we want the Excel sheet and we want Joe, but we are patient. Rick Mount, he also said he sent me some info. Where this info lives, I have no idea. But I'm happy to receive whatever info you're trying to send me. You can follow me. That was the
stat that you just pulled up two screenshots ago.
Yeah, that could be it. Maybe that's
that was the info.
That's
stat
the
that
info.
You put up.
Okay,
Facebook.
Yeah. Oh, it's on Facebook. All right, whatever. Send me that stuff. That's great. So that wraps things up. Want to thank Julia Edey. Once I am suppressing Joe's freedom of speech once again. He just talks way too damn much.
One day I'll talk about quadrants, guys. I promise.
You can talk about whatever you want tomorrow. I want to go to bed. Right. But no, we appreciate Julia Edey joining the show here today. It was tonight. This was a really fun interview with Julia. She's got a lot of warmth and a lot of insight into Zach's journey and her journey along with him as they came to West Lafayette. And it was a lot of fun to hear her talk tonight. And we appreciate all her thoughts. And then I also want to thank, everyone in the chat, everyone that tuned in. Please hit that like button on your way out. Subscribe to our channel on YouTube. If you're watching on Facebook, follow the Brags in the Stands page that we have. We have a group and a page. Please follow the page and you'll get some great content. We've been putting up pictures after the championship celebrations, like 80 photo galleries for both of them that are really good. Make sure you're following the Boiler Diehards Facebook group. Kraig is the founder and administrator of over 11,000 Boiler fans, talking all Purdue sports in there. Go ahead, Kraig.
Yeah, I forgot to mention. So we were talking about potentially doing a Boilers in the Stands bracket challenge, but we already have a really, really big one in Boiler Diehards. So we just decided to merge those.
Sure.
If you're listening, scroll back in the chat. And then once this officially gets posted, I'll put it in the comments underneath the YouTube version also with the link and the password so that you can get into that bracket challenge. But it just made more sense rather than I'm already helping. Well, Chris actually runs the one on our Boiler Diehards, but rather than having 2 different ones trying to juggle, just to merge those into one space. So I'll put that, I already put it into the live chat, but I'll put it into the comments underneath the YouTube once it post live, whatever you want to say that, so that everybody has access to that with the password also. And you get a trophy. We send an actual trophy out to the winner of that.
Well, just send it now to me because I'm winning this damn thing. So like I said before, Feed the Post with Joe Jackson and Aidan Kunst will be live tomorrow night. as long as they want to, and I'm pretty sure they're going to. So that's a Purdue basketball podcast, but they're going to be talking the NCAA tournament, everything in between, not just Purdue's road, but the entire bracket, across the board. So you guys can get a little key in on some of these teams that you may not be as familiar with. And Joe and Aidan are as good as it gets when it talks about the attention to detail for some of these teams that you may or may not have seen this season. So make sure you're following us all on Twitter. Kraig Bowers is, he's got his handle. I'm going to put you up on the spot, Kraig, at Kraig Bowers 34. He's our guy. He's going to be on the beat Friday at Columbus, Ohio for the 16 seed matchup. I'm leaving it to him. I'm going to wait till Sunday to drive out there, so I'm going to let him have his fun. Go ahead, Kraig. You're going to say something?
I wasn't.
All right, no,
but I will now. It's the first time I'm ever going to have to get my press credentials without you babysitting me.
You'll be
and
fine.
Schmoozing everybody that walks in.
Yeah, you'll be fine.
Joe, he had a 10-minute conversation with the people just checking us in the first day we went in.
That's
I believe that.
That's what you do. We built up a good relationship with them. That's what you do. Man of the people. Joe Jackson, make sure you follow Joe on Twitter all day long. He's got his hats. I think he's selling them. He's posting links.
Oh, yeah.
Crazy.
Link will be right. Link will, if you want one, just posted it. Fill out the form.
Just posted the link on Twitter. Follow him at Joe_Jackson2210. Make sure you're following at @FeedThePost_ as well. Joe is as good as they get with the X's and O's breakdown, and he's got a good thread of every team of the 4 teams that they could potentially play here in the first and second round that you'll definitely want to check out. And our guy Aidan, the coach, make sure you are following him at Aidan Kunst all day long. This is our Boiler in the Stands group. We are all diehards of this team. So just wanted to make sure I give a proper shout out to everybody here on the team. And once again, thank you to our sponsors, Fanbags Cornhole. Make sure you follow them at www.fanbagscornhole.com and use the promo code BRAGS for 10% off your entire order. And of course, our guys over at Mad Mushroom Pizza for the best pizza in the game and the best cheese sticks in the game. Use the coupon code BITS for 15% off any order you make in West Lafayette at any of their locations. And you get some good grub on a little bit of a discount here from Boilers in the Stands. So that wraps things up for today. We'll be back here tomorrow night, or these guys will be, and maybe I'll pop in if I've got some time, or Kraig will. If not, Joe and Aidan, you're in good hands with those guys. And then just stay tuned for a post-game show Friday night after the game is over, immediately following the game probably, because I'll be home. Joe and Aidan will be home, so we should be able to go live immediately following the game Friday. And then Sunday, you'll just have to kind of wait and see for updates for when we are able to go live for that game, because Kraig and I will both be there. So we're going to try to bring you the best coverage we possibly can, keep doing some things up for you. But we appreciate everyone tuning in tonight once again, and hit that like button. We're wrapping it up, Matt Painter. Don't worry. I'm not going to push it any longer. So have a good night, ladies and gentlemen. Enjoy the rest of this Pittsburgh, Mississippi State, 2-11 seeds battling it out. So that's a pretty good matchup there to watch. So enjoy the tournament. We'll see you tomorrow night, and then we'll see you Friday. Make sure you always boiler up.